Narrator's POV. When I first heard of Drowning Hill, I assumed it was just another place burdened with an old legend. But no one told me that the hill earned its name from the way water rose unnaturally around it during rain, almost like the earth itself was trying to drown what stood on top, a lone, forgotten house, the Crofton Estate. I'm Daniel Crofton, 32, a freelance photojournalist from Chicago. I inherited the house after the mysterious death of my uncle, Elias Crofton, a man I barely knew. I hadn't even met him. My father never talked about that side of the family. All I knew was that the Crofton name had once been aristocratic until it faded into obscurity, shame, and silence. The lawyer who contacted me sounded reluctant, like he wasn't just handing over a will, he was trying to get rid of something that didn't want to leave. Key arrival at Drowning Hill. It was a foggy Friday morning when I arrived in Elmswich, a town so small it barely made it to any GPS. I rented a Jeep and drove uphill, toward the Crofton property. The road was broken, lined with overgrown ivy and thick woods on either side. Even the trees felt disturbed. As I reached the top, the house came into view, Gothic, black-bricked, 3 stories tall, with spires and narrow windows like dead eyes watching you. The locals avoided it. Even the delivery man who brought me supplies left the packages at the gate and drove away without a word. I should have turned around that moment. But curiosity is a funny thing. It's louder than instinct, especially when mixed with the thrill of mystery. Derelict house inside the house. The front door creaked open on its own. I stepped inside to the scent of damp wood, old paper, and something else, metallic, almost like rusted iron or dried blood. The furniture was covered with white sheets. Portraits lined the halls, faces scratched or blurred, like time had erased them intentionally. I found a study filled with journals, but most of them were blank. Except one. It was titled, Whispers Beneath the Walls. Elias Crofton, 1996. Notebook the journal, excerpts. They don't like light. When the candles go out, they whisper louder. I thought it was rats at first. Now I know better. The mirror in the attic shows them, but only at 3:12 a.m. I have seen her, the one with no eyes. I tried to seal the basement, but the knocking continues. They want out. Or maybe they want me in. I shut the book. The air felt heavier. Flashlight first night. The whisper. That night I couldn't sleep. I left a lamp on, and I heard what sounded like soft talking through the walls. He's here. Blood of the blood. Unlock the promise. I froze. The voices were calm, almost curious. I grabbed my camera and walked into the hallway. The second floor stretched into darkness, lit only by my flashlight. I turned left, toward the old music room. That's when I saw it, a shadow moving across the floor, with no source. It wasn't mine. I pointed the flashlight, nothing. But the piano lid creaked open by itself, and one key pressed down with a loud, echoing note. I ran back to my room and locked the door. Mantelpiece clock, the history of the house. The next day, I drove down to town and met the town historian, Mrs. Greaves. She was in her 80s, hunched but sharp-eyed. When I mentioned the Crofton house, her face paled. That house ate people, son. Not with teeth, but with memory. People who live there forget who they are. Or worse, they become someone else. She showed me newspaper clippings. 1932. Crofton boy found drowned in his bed. 1957. Housemaid slits her own throat in the dining hall. 1979. Elias Crofton disappears for 5 years, returns with white hair and black eyes, then locks himself in the study for decades. I left her office shaking. Locked with key the basement door. That night, I heard the knocking. From the floor below. Knock, knock, knock. The basement. I found the door near the back kitchen. It was sealed with rusted chains. But the lock was freshly broken from the inside. I opened it. Cold air breathed up the stairs, smelling of wet stone and rot. As I descended with my flashlight, I saw strange markings on the walls, ancient symbols, scratched in what looked like dried blood. At the bottom, I found a room filled with mirrors, each one showing not me, but a different version of me. One with no eyes, one with a stitched mouth, and one that smiled back even when I wasn't. I ran. I don't remember reaching the top, but the house was darker now. I checked my phone. It was 3:12 a.m. The attic mirror. The attic mirror. I climbed up, breath heavy, hands trembling. The mirror was tall, oval, covered with a black velvet sheet. I removed it. The glass shimmered. Behind me, in the reflection, I saw the hallway and someone standing in it. A woman. Pale. Hollow-eyed. Hair floating like she was underwater. She raised her hand and pointed directly at me. To be continued in part 2. Coming up, the blood memory. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The image of the woman in the mirror, her pale face, her hollow black eyes, the way she pointed, it was burned into my mind. By morning, I was already doubting myself. Was it a hallucination? A trick of stress and shadows? But deep inside, I knew better. Something was terribly wrong in that house. DNA Bloodline Secrets. Back in the study, I found more pages in Elias's journal, pages I hadn't noticed before. They told me the blood remembers. That's why the house called me back. Why it won't let me leave. We were never just a family. We were keepers of the veil between the living and the drowned. Daniel, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And now it's your turn to decide. There was a map sketched on the back page, a hidden chamber below the basement, accessible through the cellar drain. Skull descent beneath the house. Armed with a crowbar and flashlight, I went back to the basement. In the far corner, behind rotted crates, was a rusted drain cover. I pried it open and descended a narrow iron ladder into pitch darkness. The air was suffocating, damp, vibrating with whispers. The chamber below was circular, stone-walled, lit faintly by blue fungus. In the center was a stone altar covered in dried blood and bones. I approached cautiously. Then I saw it, the Crofton family seal, carved into the altar's surface. Below it, the words, "The blood remembers." Suddenly, the walls began to breathe. I'm not exaggerating. The stone inhaled and exhaled like lungs. From the shadows, a voice, her voice. "You came back. You carry the blood." I, the drowned woman. She emerged from the wall like smoke. The same pale woman from the attic mirror. But now, she was clearer, taller than human, with long limbs and a face twisted in sorrow and rage. Her eyes were dark pools. Her mouth moved slowly. "Your grandfather sealed me here. Your uncle fed me. Now, it is your turn." I backed away. "Who are you? What do you want?" She raised a translucent hand and showed me a vision. Cyclone vision of the past. I saw Elias Crofton, young, kneeling at the altar. Beside him, another woman, bound, terrified, crying. He whispered ancient words and slit her palm with a blade. Her blood poured onto the seal. In the corner, a figure watched my father. The ritual fed her, the drowned one, the spirit bound beneath the house. Every generation, a Crofton had to perform the rite, or she would escape. But my father had refused. He'd fled. That's why I never knew this part of my family. Now that Elias was dead, the house had called me. Fire the choice. The ghost floated closer. Feed me or take his place. Around me, whispers became screams. Shadows formed faces. The altar began to glow blood red. Suddenly, the journal in my hand burst into flames, revealing a hidden message under the last page, only visible in heat. Break the seal. Burn the blood. End it. I knew what I had to do. Axe breaking the curse. I ran back up, grabbed the can of gasoline I'd brought for emergencies, and poured it over the altar and the walls of the chamber. "No!" the spirit shrieked, her voice splitting the air like thunder. I struck a match and dropped it. Flames burst upward, engulfing the room. The walls screamed. The floor cracked. The air turned black. I barely made it out of the basement before the house began to tremble. Derelict house, the collapse. Outside, I stood on the overgrown lawn, watching as Drowning Hill lived up to its name. Rain fell hard. The ground softened. The house groaned and sank, slowly, as if being swallowed by the earth. Not collapsing. Not burning. Sinking. Like the land itself had waited for this moment. Like it was finally drowning. Luggage: the aftermath. I stayed in town for one more night, in a motel on the edge of Elmswich. My dreams were quiet for the first time in days. The next morning, I drove to the Crofton Cemetery. I found my uncle's grave, and beside it, an empty stone marked, Daniel Crofton, blood unwritten. But I had written my story, in fire and ash and defiance. I left Elmswich and never looked back.